Yes, sir. It is the We Got Nets podcast. Where, of course, I'm your host, Adam Armick. Little live session over here on YouTube. If you're a part of it, we don't expect it's the royal we. I don't expect there to be a big footprint over here. I did not do a ton leading up to the start of this season, but guess what? Those good old fashioned feelings kick in as you see the Brooklyn Nets get ready to start their 2025-2026 season. So we say, let's tap in, let's have the conversation, and let's continue to evolve what we do as the Nets season gets underway. Saw out there in it. We'll keep an eye on the chat, obviously. We know Clash is in there. Why? Because Clash has been there since the dawn of time. So we'll chop this one up for a little bit for the 1, 2, 5, 0 people that come into this. We'll repurpose it. It'll be out on the podcast feeds as well. So be sure to check that out. And as I mentioned, Substack's a good place to go. A couple of articles going up at least once a week, talking about what we're seeing from this young group as they begin their journey in earnest as NBA professionals. Listen, we think about the construct of the Brooklyn Nets in years past and what it's been to be a Nets fan in what we thought or what we called for to be a rebuild, right? What we called for to be a tank. The Nets never fully went into that, and even some fans would say this offseason, making the move where you finally, as we've called for, move on from Cam Johnson, you still end up bringing back a Michael Porter Jr. But all those conversations will be things that we evolve through. The starting five for the Nets in this game was, of course, veteran heavy. Michael Porter Jr., Nicholas Claxton, Terrence Mann, newly acquired this offseason, along with now really a veteran in Cam Thomas to go along with rookie Ben Saraf. Then coming off the bench, we did see, of course, Yegor Domin. Domin the Omen, I believe, is the nickname we need to work with here. But he got into the game. They ended up going deeper as we got towards the back end. Nolan Traorè did get into it. A DNP for one player on this roster, and that was one Danny Wolf. But here's what I'll say. First and foremost, 136-117 final. The Nets lose the season opener, game 1 of 82 in the loss column. And against the Charlotte Hornets. What are expectations for that roster, right? Giving up 136 points is probably not going to be surprising for the Brooklyn Nets. Why? Because we're talking about a roster that is filled with a lot of young players. And we're also talking about a roster that isn't constructed to be, night over night, possession over possession, defensively stout. You actually even saw Zaire Williams in this game go down with a bit of an injury issue there for himself. So the rotations are going to evolve. And there's just very specific things that I think at a high level we can take away from this. First of all, let's talk about the stat lines for both of the two main rookies. We will get to Nolan Traorè as well, who ends up playing 19 minutes. But Saraf comes in 20 minutes, ends up finishing 2 of 7 from the field. That drops off over the course of this game. 4 of 6 from the free throw line, though. 6 defensive rebounds, 7 total rebounds, 4 assists. He had 3 assists very early in this game. We started to hear this as we were working our way through training camp and looking at the state of some of the rookies' games. Ben Saraf has an NBA ready body, and that matters, especially as we think about a long 82 game season. It's going to be a grind. There's going to just flat out. There's going to be games where these guys get beat up physically. I said it over on X. I'm looking forward to having some of these veterans turn on their own physicality because these rookies are going to get pushed around at points, and I think there's going to just be some energy check for the Brooklyn Nets in terms of defending their young players as they develop. It's a good sign, though, to me. I think Ben Saraf plays a very controlled game. He worked his way into the paint, was able to get towards the basket, draw fouls, and really doesn't have any sense of the speed of the game being too much for him. We'll hold off on talking about the defensive side of things because I want to go back and watch those possessions. I mean, when you give up 136 points, it obviously is not going to be something where you see a lot of stout defense, but at the same time, again, we're going to be talking about analyzing these guys on individual levels. Like, what do we see, right? Um, are they able to close out on the wing? Are they able to stay in front of mismatching and switching defensive assignments? That's going to matter here. So Ben Saraf has a nice offensive game, and I think we like in the end what it potentially could look like. Everybody's a minus, obviously, for the Brooklyn. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Oddly enough, Tyrese Martin, who I have some thoughts about being on this roster. Not because I don't like him, but just because of other cuts that had to get made in order to accomplish what the final roster looked like for opening night. He played 2-0. He played neutral. Ended up running 26 minutes of clean ball, and that's impressive when you lose a game by 19. Saraf played to a -6 in the plus minus category, gave you 8 points in totality. Let's flip it over to the higher draft pick, the highest draft pick for the Brooklyn Nets, and that's of course Dëmin. He finishes 4 of 6 from the field. Guess what? 4 of 6 from beyond the arc. That thing that we wondered about. How is the shooting going to evolve for almost all of the rookies? All of them had these questions about what is the offensive game going to look like? Are they going to be able to get their shot? So the fact that Dëmin lives on the wing in this game, I think is a great sign. Plays 22 minutes, goes 4 of 6, gets to the line twice as well, and gives you 5 rebounds to go along with 2 assists and 1 steal. Bit of a gimme. It was an inbounds play that just basically got thrown right to him, and ended up getting fouled off of that possession as well. So we'll keep an eye on how he looks. But 14 points for the rookie in his debut. That again, the 3-point shooting, which we saw in training camp, which we saw in summer league, like it looked like we were going to be okay. I think what we find more interesting really is, again, and we saw this developing over the course of summer league and over the course of training camp. Ben Saraf is the more NBA ready body. Ben Saraf maybe is more naturally suited to be playing that point forward kind of role. Dëmin, though we believe that he has that versatile offensive game, guess what? Early days, knock down triples. Like it's okay if he kind of lives more in a wing role to start, and then you build out the rest of it. And I think, as he mentioned when we were listening to media day sessions and what his experience was early on, getting his first taste of the NBA in the summertime, what was it? Yeah, I know the physicality is going to matter. I got to get bigger. I got to get stronger. And he even backed away from saying point guard, point guard, point guard. He just said, I'm going to learn. I'm going to develop. I'm going to take everything that coaches tell me, the veterans tell me, and I'm just going to try to get better. So, going back to the draft, we understand fans had their reactions to it and how they felt about everything. At the end of the day, if you're just going to put stock in the players that were taken, the premise was simple. Like, we're going to take the guys that we believe have the upside to develop into cornerstone pieces for our franchise. And maybe it feels like they were taken out of order in some regard. That's okay. Bottom line is, I like what I saw from him in his debut. 22 minutes. And again, it was spread out pretty evenly across everyone. We'll pause for a second on the rookies, talk about Traorè in a minute, and Powell, who both got into this game. And just remind you, nobody played over 26 minutes. That was Tyrese Martin. Michael Porter Jr. played 25. Nicholas Claxton played 23, 24 for Thomas. So we look through those veteran names, guys that have been here. Obviously, the quick check in on Terrence Mann, he played 19 minutes, right? So this is what it's going to look like. You look at the rotations; those are going to be very fluid, very flexible. Love the fact, by the way, that when the fourth quarter started off, it was Powell, it was Traorè out there with Claxton, Michael Porter Jr., and Cam Thomas. Like, if you're Jordy Fernandez, that is a must. And it's not about, again, wins and losses, but in terms of finding the chemistry and finding how pieces fit together. And that doesn't necessarily mean because Michael Porter Jr. is going to be here forever. Or Cam Thomas for that matter, who we know has the no trade clause, and he's going to be able to go right to free agency this offseason. But it is about understanding how these pieces, how roles fit together inside of your team and inside of your system. So when you go through and you look at where the bulk of the scoring came from, you think about it just in terms of, yeah, we want to develop all these guys, but take the note, it's 12 for Michael. I mean, 12 for Michael Porter Jr. 5 of 15 shooting. I mean, good Lord. Nicholas Claxton, 8 of 12. Did some things for you in and around the basket. 17 points for him, 13 for Mann, and 15 for Cam Thomas. So you get a lot of that scoring from those players. And then, frankly, off the bench, he is now a veteran of this roster and of the NBA. Day'Ron Sharpe, again, doing his work in and around the basket, although 1 of 2 from beyond the arc, pulled up from 3. He gave you 4 rebounds across his only 14 minutes of action, and 14 points, though. So, and again, a -13 in just those 14 minutes. So we'll see how these things evolve. But it's going to be development and chemistry and showcasing, because there's a lot of guys, right? It's going to be a very evolving process for the Brooklyn Nets and for this roster. So when you look at it in totality, it's certainly something to keep an eye on. Notably here, before we get to Traorè and Powell, I'll just also mention, because I said this over on X, I think it's interesting that, well, and there is actually a shout out to Clash, because if you go back to last year, in our previous life with Doug Noren. We talked about. I remember this came up. I think down the stretch of the season, and it was, are we getting glimpses of what Day'Ron Sharpe can be? Can he actually maybe you move on from Nicholas Claxton and Day'Ron becomes that guy? And then you look at a game like this, and you're reminded, yep, 6 to 7, 14 minutes, 14 points, and 5 fouls. 5 fouls. 5 fouls in a game that you're giving up 136 and defense isn't really even a factor in it, and you're still taking those 5 fouls, right? So that's always been a part of his game. Yes, he's one of the most elite per minute rebounders in basketball, and he also cannot stay on the floor without fouling. So conversation for another day. One other name that I'll just point out here, even though he's 1 of 6 from the field in his 20 minutes of action, and that's Noah Clowney, right? So it's very easy, I think, to come in with all these rookies and get so focused on what they're going to be doing. But it does matter the role that Noah Clowney plays. Remember, last year it became very 3-point heavy. Not a problem, needs to evolve that area of his game. But today, at least in the opener, 1 of 3 from beyond the arc, only 1 of 6 from the field. But he went to the basket, drew a foul, got to the line twice in this one, gave you 4 rebounds, gave you 2 assists. There's some things there that you like. Going towards the basket, I think you have to find what his complete game is going to look like. And, just like in that mold of a Nicholas Claxton, listen, we saw it in off seasons past. We saw it from Noah Klein this off season. I'm not knocking him. But he talked, everybody talked about, oh, it looks bigger, looks stronger. You get out on the NBA court with other NBA players, and you can kind of get that gauge of where this player is. And he still has a long way to go. He's still a very young player, so that's okay. But we'll go inside his numbers here just briefly before we touch on the other 2 rookies. Remember, if you go back to last year, and really to his career, by the way, in his rookie season, only 23 games, only 4 starts. He averaged under 1.5 threes per game in terms of shot attempts. He was up to 5.7 last year, right? And the percentage was 33. Like, it's good that he's shooting them, and it's good that it's evolving. You really loved that the free throws went up from 70 almost to 84% a year ago. So again, it's an evolution for him. And we just got to always remind ourselves, this kid's 21 years old. He is right there in that group of the rookie class. And now when you talk about, yes, drafted in 5 rookies and you want to see all of them play, also include Noah Clowney in that. It matters that he's going into his 3rd season, obviously, but it doesn't matter in terms of where does he fit. It's a whole new group that you're really focusing on in terms of that chemistry and development for him. So just a good note when we think about Noah Clowney, and we'll probably end up doing an article over on Substack looking at his game specifically and what we want to watch for everybody's development, really, right? But rookie-wise, we're always just going to say, what's tonight's sample size? What's game 2 of 82, 3, 4, 5? And we'll probably do those check-ins, right? I think it's always good to think about seasons, whether it's NBA, NFL, MLB. I'm not really watching it, but you think about it in quarters, right? So, give me 20 games. I want to see 20 games of all these rookies and what the different combinations are. We'll start to get a sample size of who overlaps with who and whether or not there's positives to take away from those combinations. So that's really what it's going to be for me. Now, Nolan Traorè and Drake Powell both get into this game, though they make their entrances later. I think it's 3rd quarter for both. No, 3rd quarter for Drake Powell, 4th quarter for Nolan Traorè. Traorè came in 9 minutes, 1 of 3 from the field, 1 of 2 from beyond the arc, gave you 1 assist, gave you 2 steals. Again, for him, we're going to focus on his size and whether or not, although I believe he did put on, it was already heavier coming into the season than he had been. I think it was 175. He's up to 185 now. I think he's actually a little bit taller than when you go back to the end of his last season, even though there's some Pro Bowl in there. So getting him over to the stateside, now listed at 6'3", like there's some chance that he ends up being 6'4" when it's all said and done because he is still only 19 years old. So we'll keep an eye on that. Good for him to get a taste. I liked what we saw from him in Summer League. And I think, again, you can't make any proclamations. I mean, you can make one proclamation we can make. Ben Saraf is NBA ready from a physicality standpoint, excuse me, and you can probably expect him to be a consistent player in this type of minute range right out the gate, and it won't necessarily have some of the speed bumps of ramping up the volume and the physicality of the NBA. For Dëmin, I think it's going to be that a little more perimeter focused right now. Bring along that ball handling, bring along the getting downhill, getting towards the basket. That's going to be an evolution of his game as well. And you can allow him to be having a role for himself while still working on those facets. I think Nolan Traorè is an interesting one. Like, do we look at him as a bit of a spark off the bench? We know how fast he can be with the ball in his hands, so I think there'll be a lot of those open court opportunities for him. But we're probably gonna have to wait and see. And again, can you hold up defensively? Doesn't have to be a reason why he doesn't see the court, obviously, in a season like this, but it will be something that Jordy Fernandez is probably going to talk about for any of these players, right? Including, by the way, Drake Powell. He played 7 minutes. He was 1-on-1 from the field. He grabbed 3 rebounds, all offensive, 5 assists. Very nice. We'll talk about other rookies, by the way. There were rookies, obviously, on the flip side of this for the Charlotte Hornets as well. Con Knipple, who some people had on the radar, went 20th in the draft, and he had himself an 11.5 rebound, 1 assist, plus 10 in the plus minus category, right? So we're gonna have to go back and kind of look at all the guys that could have been, and there will be those comparisons. Like there's no two ways about it, and that's okay. There should be. Again, let's take the entire season to think about how we feel about all these players and all these rookies and where they develop. And remember that the Nets went with the youngest of the young players and believe that we're talking about upside and development over the course of this year. So Powell gets in the game. There's a lot to like about him. There, he literally walked on the court and immediately took a foul. That's fine. It's worth noting that he ended up only having, oh, nope, sorry, almost got that category wrong, 4 personal fouls, right? So we talked about that before with Day'Ron Sharpe, 2 very different players, but these are things to watch for, right? Sometimes when you go through an off season, you're building towards a draft and you're identifying the traits that you like about players, it's a lot easier to hone in on those attributes and maybe say, but what about, right? So for Drake Powell coming out of this first game, what about the defensive end, right? We know that he can play that role. We believe that he has the upside because of the wingspan, but speed, right? The athleticism at the NBA level, that's going to be something that he has to prove. He's going to have to prove it every single night consistently if you want to tag him with, yes, two-way player that can really do some things for you on the defensive end. It's going to be a long time for me personally before I have real definitive ideas about not only the rookie class, but just the season, right? I can tell you right now that there's going to be a lot of opposing play calling and broadcasts that are going to be talking about highlight reel moments. There were a ton of open court, open floor, transition buckets, right? Turnovers, and just a lot of highlight reel kind of alley-oop slams and all that jazz for the Charlotte Hornets. That okay, fine. And now at some point we're going to talk about are these rookies, in Drake Powell's case, someone who we think can be a defensive value player for us as well to his offensive game? At some point this year, we're going to look at him and say, hey, I need to see it. You need to be able to string together 5, 10 possessions in a row where we keep going, wow, that was a great job by Drake Powell there, right? Moved his feet, stayed in front of the perimeter shooter, denied ball access if he's playing off ball and trying to prevent, backdoor cuts, trying to prevent perimeter looks, right? That's going to matter. We can back this thing all the way out inside of this game and just talk about the raw numbers here as well. The Nets shot just 44% from the field, just 35% from beyond the arc. They did take 40 of them. But Charlotte Hornets, 53% from the field, 47% on their 36 attempts from deep. Free throws, listen, Nets, is even 34-33. Nets knocked down just under 74%. And I actually will go back over to the box score here quickly just to talk about free throws. This isn't a banner debut for one Michael Porter Jr., right? Veteran player, should be. You want to say, it's Cam Thomas, but Michael Porter Jr., whatever. Best players on the team, right? Only gets to the line twice, misses both of those. Cam Thomas, 13. Heard the other broadcast say it. He's out there, he's foul hunting. Not foul hunting like James Harden. I think that he was just, hey, you can't keep up with me. You can't stay in front of me. You're going to have to be chasing me. I'll go to the line, right? So when you look inside of his 24 minutes and you see 15 points, but just 2 and 9 from the field and 0 of 2 from deep, but he gets in the box score off of getting to the free throw line. And I do wonder, I wonder if that's something as this season unfolds, if that is a selling point when we talk about other potential landing spots for him. No trade clause, of course, but right opportunity comes up, and I think it'll certainly be a discussion that they're going to have with him. And when he gets, when you get to point to that number, a guy that can come off the bench and do that sort of thing for you and get consistently to the line, that's going to be a factor. Again, mentioned Saraf, he was good from the line. So, outside of that, though, you're talking about nobody else with more than two free throws. Terrence Mann got there 3 times, knocked down his. Everybody else, two and under. 50% for Dayron, 50% for Zaire Williams, only plays in 15 minutes of action. So we'll see. Just we talk about as I smash the camera across the room. We'll see. There's just a lot of things that we're going to have to watch evolve over time. Rebounds absolutely crushed, plus 12 for Charlotte in this one, specifically defensive rebounding. It's a plus 10 margin for the Charlotte Hornets. That matters, and the physical presence for this team, that's a TBD, right? We know what Dayron Sharp can do on the glass. We know that Nicholas Claxton can rebound, but physical presence is going to be a factor. And then athleticism, that's still going to be a question mark here. With all these rookies and players that you're not going to check the box on every single one of these rookies and say, oh, ultra athletic. That's not the mold that they're built in. So you're going to be more reliant on a Michael Porter Jr., Dayron Sharp, who's built to do that thing. Zaire Williams, who has that defensive, makeup in his play style. Those are going to be guys that are going to have to do that. So should be interesting to see if we're just talking about, cleaning the defensive glass. If you're the opposition, you win that margin. Offensive is 14-12 in favor of Charlotte as well. And then, turnovers are equal. And actually, frankly, 17 turnovers apiece. That's a lot, no doubt about it. Interestingly enough, though, 17 points for the Nets off those turnovers, 12 for Charlotte. So they did win that. Here's a big one. And this goes back to the defense. 23 fast break points for the Charlotte Hornets, just 5 for the Brooklyn Nets. And that's the Nolan Traorè discussion we have, but this team is gonna struggle to play at real pace because while you have you have a lot of ball handlers with court vision. It's just the evolution of that, I think, is going to take a long time. And in between there, you don't have the other guys that are going to be able to trigger that offense in that way. So going to be interesting to think about that. Nets got absolutely destroyed in terms of points in the paint, plus 14 for the Charlotte Hornets. Again, interior defense, a couple technical fouls picked up here. Nets did have a largest lead of 3, though. So we're going to see. Again, this is nothing that I am going to think about in the slightest as far as what it means for any of these players on a individual level or on a team level. But it's the first one we got. And again, I don't hate it. I'll be honest with you. Like, it was fun. You get to watch the young rookies play, and you get to feel like, to me, especially with Saraf, I'll give Dëmin the same nod here. Traorè and Powell, too small of a sample to talk about just yet, but it seemed like they were all right. They got out there and they were comfortable. So now we just wait to see when, how do they look in their next opportunity. And as I said, today's starting lineup was Porter Jr., Nick Claxton, Terrence Mann, Cam Thomas, Ben Saraf. How will that look different? And we can make the note here just in terms of the others. So one thing that happened here for the Brooklyn Nets, I'll mention it now, and we'll go into it more over on Substack, just in terms of where the Nets roster stands and what those expectations are. They waived Kobe Buffkin, who came over in the trade and salary dumps and all moving parts. That's okay. It's not a big deal. Waived Drew Timme and waived Dariq Whitehead. That was a bummer to me. Drew Timme, hey, listen, it's a good performance, and I'll take a look here real quick, whether or not the intention here is to have these guys both end up back in the G League or not. That's definitely a TBD. And maybe it already happened. I'll have to just do the double check here. In the mix, Whitehead was due a guaranteed $3.3 million in the 30 years rookie deal. That doesn't really matter. Averaged almost 6 points and a rebound in half of 20 games last year. Really, just for me, from a Dariq Whitehead standpoint, you drafted this kid knowing he had the injury history, knowing it was going to be a long road back. I'm disappointed that he is not on this roster. Like, I'll say that flat out. It's disappointing to come into this first game of the season and it's all good and all the young players. That's great. And again, you're having the debate about, at this point, when you look through the roster, Terrence Mann or Dariq Whitehead? Is that the conversation? Jalen Wilson is probably the other, Jalen Wilson or Dariq Whitehead. Maybe that was the conversation. And it's okay. You can go with Jalen Wilson, who played 15 minutes, 3 of 5, 2 of 4 from deep. Like he walked right in the door and knocked down a triple. Gave you 8 points in this one. Nothing else in the stat sheet for him. 1 turnover, 1 personal foul, and was plus 10 in those 15 minutes. And did that in the back end of this game. Okay. Wait and see. So you're going to watch players like Jalen Wilson, who I'm fine keeping, by the way. I think a lot of people talked about him being the one that was going to be out. I'm fine with him, with him still being on this team. I'm rooting for him. Very specific role, right? Older coming out. And then that's maybe just the part for me that's a little bit of a disconnect because Wilson's 24 years old. That's not old. It's old compared to 20 and 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. But maybe the Nets just look at him as having some value as you continue to showcase what he is, a guy that can knock down the triple, we think, with consistency, even though so far we're still waiting for that number to be at the right spot where you're really talking about him being someone you can rely on from the perimeter. So that's an interesting one. And then the other one is Tyrese Martin. I think Tyrese Martin earned being on this roster this year. You go back to last season, and everything about it is deserving of it, right? Last year, after not being at the NBA level in 23-24, 60 games, 11 starts, 22 minutes, knocked down 40% from the field, but 35% from beyond the arc. It ballooned in that way. Had a couple of assists per game, averaged almost 4 rebounds per game. So and he's still a young player. I mean, he's 26, but on the younger side. Now he constitutes one of those veterans. So as the season unfolds, I think we'll look at a player like Tyrese Martin. We'll look at a player like Jalen Wilson. And whether or not, Drew Timme is off into his own category, but I do think the Dariq Whitehead side of this is going to be interesting. Does he end back? Does he end up in Long Island? If that is that an option? How are they going to look at it? Does another team take a flyer on him? Right? Plenty of teams will be happy to take a look at a guy early in the year to see if there's something there. So something to watch there. Again, back to the top, 136-117. Brooklyn Nets fall to the Charlotte Hornets in their season opener. Go ahead and give you a lay of the land. This was, of course, a road game. The Nets will be back on Friday night in Brooklyn, opening up the Barclays season against the Cleveland Cavaliers. 10:24, 7:30 tip-off there. And then they will continue. Just take a quick peek here. They will pop back out on the road for San Antonio and Houston, and then come back for their first homestand of the season, which will be October 29th through November 3rd. They will play the visiting Hawks, 76ers, and then Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm going to go to one of those, bud. I'm going to tell you right now. You can come find me out there. So hopefully you go ahead and you hit me up on social. Let me know if you're going to be in the room. There's got the new concourse there. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing look for Barclays Center, and I'm sure there's going to come a point when there'll be some booze coming down from there, potentially. I don't know. I ended last year covering the Brooklyn Nets saying you can sell the fan base on look at the young talent, look what we're developing, look what we're going to try to build here. And I believe that Nets fans should come into this season fully embracing, hey, we're going to let this thing play itself out. We're going to enjoy it. And as long as 25 games in this season, as long as we've seen some of those, flashy moments from some of the rookies, then I think we should be good. And I really hope that, when this team is 5-15, when this team is 6-25, whatever the numbers are, that you don't lean in with the booze if you're going to the game. Not because, there's ownership and there's management and there's everything else. But remember, we believe we have the head coach in Jordi Fernandez. We believe that we have a lot of young developing talent on this roster this season. So this is a long game. And whether or not people on the outside want to talk about Nets are fully disrespecting the season, going into the full time. Yeah, okay, great. We are. We're also developing 5 rookies and 2 to 3 more players that are 24 and younger. So, this isn't the worst roster comprised of the, worst veterans in the league going out and just cooking the season. These 82 games matter in a big way for where the Nets franchise goes over the next couple of years. Whatever direction that takes, the development of these players matters. And Jordi Fernandez is that guy to hopefully lead the way. So, Cleveland, homestand, Friday night. We'll see what goes on there. I don't know. Should I take a spin? should I try to pop up in Barclays on a Friday night? We'll see. We're gonna have an evolving studio here. Hey, check it out, Brooklyn Nets. We're gonna have the evolving studio here as the season gets underway. We're gonna be in a different space. Gonna get it set up kind of like the old days. Old days. Mr. Lebowski. That's a full kickback. Um, that was a part of the very earliest of journeys for Nets coverage. We got Nets coverage, and he's going to come back around here as well. So thank you. Small group of guys in here and gals. Hopefully, appreciate everybody. Really awesome stuff. And if you're on YouTube, continue to subscribe and keep an eye on it. Shorts are going to be a bigger thing in this iteration. Easier. I can do things quickly, get out some thoughts and random points of the day. So be tuned in for those notifications, subscribe, please, by all means, and to tell people about it, man. This is going to be a lot looser, Watch this, no fucks given. See, couldn't do that. And the other iteration couldn't drop an occasional F-bomb if I wanted to. But we can sprinkle some of those in, some articles over on Substack. So we got Nets, and of course, at Adam Arbrecht over on X. Listen, the way in which I engage with the community, especially on social, is going to look different. Game nights, I'll definitely pop off in there like I did tonight. But it's gonna be different and unique. So get me in the places that you can get me. Check out the article, show the support, and again, hit me up if you're going to a game and you guys want to meet up. Love to do it. I spent years and continue to do it, but I spent years getting amazing support from the entire Nets community. I want to continue to give that back. So looking forward to a good season. Looking forward to some young players developing. Looking forward to Friday night and the Cleveland Cavaliers as the Nets will open up Barclays for the 2025-2026 season. Listen, until next time, we will always remain this, that I miss my friend Doug Norrie. And I can't wait until he's back. And by the way, quick pause, there'll be intro and outro music and, and holding pages and all that jazz. But come on, it was a pop off on the season opener. I miss my friend Doug Norrie. And I hope maybe one day he makes an appearance so we can keep talking all things Brooklyn Nets basketball.